Welcome back, everybody. We are in the middle of our 300th podcast, which is very exciting. And Shannon Vasconcellos is here with me. We're answering listener questions. But I promised that I would announce the winner of our contest. We held a special contest, asked people to give us reviews on Apple Podcasts. And in exchange, we would draw a winner and they would win 2 hours of time with either a finance or an admissions expert. And the winner is Christy V113. So Christy V113, you left us a review on September 30th. We very much appreciate it. Please get in touch with us at gettingin.voiceamerica@gmail.com. Again, gettingin.voiceamerica@gmail.com. You get in touch with us. You can let us know if you want to do admissions or finance, and we'll get that ball rolling. So thank you so much for your reviews. All right, Shannon, let's jump back into it. I think you are answering. I can't even remember where we're at. All right.
I can't either.
We have a few questions from Rosie. Why don't we start with
Okay.
the first one, and then maybe we can go to an admissions one and come back. All right,
Okay.
Rosie's first question for you is, I've heard you say, oh, my favorite, that if students, but she's heard us say it, so that makes me feel better.
Okay.
Yes. All right, I've heard you say that if students have income less than $7,000 a year, it won't be counted against them when awarding financial aid. But what about savings? Are $7,000 of savings invisible too? Good question.
They are not, unfortunately. There is that income protection allowance where the first chunk, about $7,000 of student income, is invisible. That's essentially to let a kid have a part-time job without it hurting them on the financial aid applications. Unfortunately, there is no such allowance against student assets. And the theory is, students can be contributing everything they've got in the bank to college. And so there is, at most schools, it's about a 20% assessment rate on student assets right from the beginning, or right from the first dollar that you've got in the bank. They think you can give 20% of that to help pay 20 cents of that to pay your college tuition. So unfortunately, there isn't any such allowance. So anything a student has in the bank is going to feed into that financial aid formula and cost you some financial aid eligibility. Now, does that mean don't save? Certainly not. You should be saving as much as you can for college. Whatever amount you save helps you much more than it hurts you in terms of the loss of financial aid. If you're saving tens of thousands of dollars for college, a savings held in the parent's name gets a preferential treatment as opposed to student assets. They acknowledge parents have other financial responsibilities. So for tremendous amounts of money, you might want to consider saving it in the parent's name as opposed to the student's name. Or if also another strategy would be spending down student assets first before you touch the parent assets, should help you in the financial aid process.
All right, awesome.
Okay. Next admissions question is from Natalie. Is there a way that an underclassman who has an idea as to where they want to apply to college to get a leg up on finding supplemental essays? I understand that they show up in the common application once you start preparing it as an upperclassman, but is there any other way to find them, or can you start a dummy application just in order to access the essay prompts?
So the short answer here is no. But you can, of course, start a dummy application. It's not even a dummy application. Students can start their common application whatever year they want, freshman, sophomore, junior. I suppose if you wanted to take a look when you were an 8th grader, you could. Every year the Common App gets taken down, usually somewhere around the end of June. It's down for a few days and then it comes back up, and they don't necessarily change a ton about it, but they make revisions, they make some tweaks here and there. But when it comes back up, you can simply log in and roll over the information that you have in there into the new version. But so you could go in and see what the supplemental essays are now. The reason that you can't really work ahead is because schools change their supplemental essays. So some schools will have the same essay year after year after year, but you never know. They may have had the same supplemental question for 10 years, but the year you work on it and do it ahead of time is the year that they suddenly come out with a new essay. The new supplemental prompts are typically available somewhere around or after August 1st. That's typically when the new Common App is available for the year and when many schools who are on the Common App make their supplemental questions available. Some will not be available when the Common App goes live. So sometimes we're waiting 2, 3, 4 weeks for the actual supplemental questions to be available. Some schools will announce their supplemental questions as early as January or February, well before that August 1 date. So I think what your daughter can do, it is your daughter, right? Actually, you didn't say that. I think what your child can do, your student, is to go have that list of schools that they know they're going to be applying to and get on the mailing list and keep an eye out. And if they are the kinds of schools that are going to announce their question early, then the student can be working ahead on those. But typically, even then, not until the second half of junior year. And I wouldn't really advise starting that much earlier anyway. There's so many different things that can happen to a student. Maybe they're going to do something super interesting over the summer or that second semester of junior year. And so if you start too much ahead, you may have missed an opportunity to write about something much more recent and impactful on you than what you had chosen to write about. The Common App typically announces its prompts for the year sometime in that January, February, March timeframe. They did not change this year, but we had a few years there where they were tweaking them and changing them slightly every year. So even there, it's a little bit dangerous to go ahead. And again, I'm not sure I recommend it. Most students are not ready to work on that main essay until at least the second half of junior year. And so yeah, the reality of it is that you can't really work too far ahead, but you certainly can create an account and an application and start filling it out now. There's no harm to that. All right, Shannon, we'll go back to Rosie. Rosie's
Yes.
second question. I need to put on my glasses here. All right, number 2. When they ask for assets, do we also count the money we have in our wallets or just the money we have in our bank account? And since my dad has a company, do I add the assets from the company along with his own, or will they be asked separately?
So you do have to count the money in your wallet. They do. The actual question on the FAFSA, they ask for the amount of your cash, checking, and savings accounts. So that's a brilliant idea. I heard this week of, I'll just take all of my money out of the bank the day before I file the FAFSA, and then I'll report zero money. No, you still have to report your cash, all that money in your pocket. Now, are the schools going to dig in your pocket to verify how much money you have? Probably not, but you are expected to report any money that you have in cash, in your wallets, under your mattresses, anything like that. What you do not likely have to report is the money from your dad's company. That is a separate question on the FAFSA asking you to report the value of any businesses that you own or that your parents own. But there's a great big exclusion on that question where they tell you you do not have to report any small family-owned businesses. How they define small and family owned is less than 100 employees and at least 50% owned within the family, either by one person or multiple family members. So if your dad's company falls under those qualifications, you don't have to report the asset of that company anywhere. It's only if your dad owns a huge company or owns in partnership with a lot of non-family members that you would ever have to report that business at all.
All right, excellent. Well, let's go back to that question that Todd asked, if you would, because I know we had one and we skipped over it. And
yes. So Todd asked, my senior daughter is a competitive applicant to the schools on her list. Her reach schools tout that they are looking for things like leaders and world changers. These are schools like UNC and Davidson. I think we actually had a previous question from Todd. He mentioned those schools before. With the reality that not everyone is a leader, how serious do such statements factor into the admissions process? If a student is strong in academics, SAT, character, service, and letters, but lacks leadership in the traditional sense, students? Should she look at other colleges if such schools are already on the match reach bubble for her? She is a demure personality and also transferred from homeschool to a small private school after 10th grade, so she has not had much leadership opportunity.
Sure. This is a good question. I think that what they are sharing a little bit is institutional priorities, that they are prioritizing students who are involved and do things. And I actually think you're reading the question in, you are reading into what they're saying as must be a traditional leader. And yet we all know of people who are doing things, you could say, changing the world, but doing so much more quietly. I can think of a student who I know who has worked super hard behind the scenes in a lab working on stuff that I don't totally understand in biochemistry, removing particles from water, and in that way kind of creating potable water that people can drink. This student is not a leader in his school. He is not someone that is well known to those around him, but he is working on something that really could change the world. So I would, rather than assuming that the colleges are defining leaders and world changers as students who are strictly captain of a varsity sports team or president of their class or the leader of the largest club in the school, to reframe that a little bit and think about, help your daughter think about where are ways that I am leading or I am really contributing to the things that I'm doing, even if I'm not holding those very recognizable leadership roles. Certainly these schools are going to love to see those very recognizable leadership roles, but you can't fill your school with just the students who were in those roles, because then you'd have all leaders and no followers. And every group needs different types of personalities to contribute. So really, rather than saying, I'm not even going to apply there, instead, what I would say is for your daughter to really be thoughtful about, where am I contributing in significant ways, and putting the focus and emphasis on that rather than worrying about the other. Okay.
I love that. Don't let them frame it for you. You tell them how you're a leader and how you're changing the world. Don't let them frame it for you. You do that framing.
Exactly. And they're really not telling you that it has to be,
Right.
that it has to be this very traditional leadership role that you're thinking about. That's actually your brain that's putting that in there. And
That's right. Yeah. And that'd be a pretty boring school if it was a whole school of captains of the football team.
That's right.
They need other types of people.
The football team. I aspire to this for my own child, but that's exactly right. You can't have everyone with the same. Right. That's not what the schools are looking for. Right. All right, Rosie has a final question for us. And I have to say, shout out to Rosie. We usually get finance questions from parents, and this is coming from a student, and I love that. All right, Rosie, here's your third question. I have leftover financial aid money, but it is my parents' bank account since I don't have a bank. It's in my parents' bank account since I don't have a bank account. So when they ask for the student's assets, am I supposed to count that leftover financial aid money? Good question.
Yeah, so I would say technically, yes. You are supposed to be reporting if it's money you've got sitting in a bank account. Yes, you are supposed to report it. On the income side of things, so the financial aid applications kind of have two sections. They ask about your income and your assets. On the income side of things, they say don't count financial aid as income. Now, where to report it? Is it a student asset or is it a parent asset? To me, Rosie, even though this was your financial aid money, if it's sitting in your parent's account, I would report that as a parent asset. Because legally, kind of once it's in the account, you gave it to them, it's sitting in their account. Of course, they're going to, spend it on you or give it to
Hopefully.
you. Yeah, I would hope so. So that you can, presumably it's maybe to kind of pay your rent throughout the semester or buy books, that kind of thing. But if it's in your parents' account, I would count it as their money. If the school did any kind of verification, they would say that's your parents' money because it is in their account. And that's where it's going to be most beneficial on the financial aid application. I think I talked about it a few questions back, that student assets are hit more harshly Then parent assets, I think I talked about that. The days are blurring together if I talked about it today or not. I've talked about it at some point. But student assets are hit more harshly on the financial aid applications than parent assets. So if that money's sitting in your parent's account, I would report it as a parent asset, and that will get you gentler treatment on the financial aid formula. And if it is your financial aid money, you could even send a quick email to the financial aid office saying, this isn't really a long-term asset that I have. This is just a refund from my financial aid that's going to be spent over the course of the semester. They may even exclude it for you. I think you need to report it, but they might be willing to exclude it for you. So I would send an email to the financial aid office and ask them to do that.
Shannon, thank you so much. Next week, Ian is here, and he's going to be talking about choosing a public honors college with you. Supplemental essays for the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and Purdue, and what to do now that you've completed your financial aid applications. We are here every Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern and 1 p.m. Pacific.